I wish that were me. Before we open this review of chapter 330 of My Hero Academia, please do me a favor, leave all notes on the chapter in the comment section down below, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come with the channel. Now, let's get into it. What's up guys, Uncle Pencil here, and here we are to review chapter 330 of My Hero Academia, which is known as Me and Myself. And now that I've actually read the chapter title, because fun fact, ironically enough, I don't really read the chapter titles until I go to actually review these chapters. It's by reading these chapters like 2 or 3 times before I actually review them. So I don't know, I need to start doing that. But regardless of that, it's a pretty clever chapter title to go on what happens later on in the chapter. But then again, I'm getting way too distracted. Let's hop right on into it. So we get to see that the idea of this being that Stars and Stripe is encountering, being Shigaraki, I messed it up, being All For One, is kind of false. This is apparently Shigaraki Tomura. So he should be a tad bit worried about an EMP attack, because apparently, it makes sense that the Japan, especially if it's asking for help, puts on all the information it knows. But man, knowing specifically about Shigaraki's ability to EMP people, specifically him, knowing what he looks like, knowing how to expect him, and I know these are trained fighter pilots, so their visual acuity is probably 10 times better than mine. But I feel like if I'm in a plane traveling at those speeds, looking around, I would not be able to ascertain who that was flying on a Nomu 40 feet away. There's a decent distance, to the point where when we're directly behind Star and Stripe, the Nomu and Shigaraki in this sense are super far away. The fact that these two are even able to communicate with each other is rather impressive. But regardless of that, we get to see that now everyone's wondering, what's the dude? What's up here? Because this dude's so dangerous and he shouldn't be taken lightly. So to the point where they literally activate their anti-EMP shields, which I guess is a thing you can have. Why wouldn't you have that always activated? I get why you wouldn't have autopilot always activated. Sometimes you need to be able to zoom, dab, dip, and do all that good stuff. But why wouldn't you always have shock shield mode activated? That just seems like a good thing. You never want to be EMP'd, but I guess it's such a rare situation that you probably wouldn't think of it too much, and it may take a lot of energy out of the plane. So I guess, there are ups and downs. But then we get to see that Star and Stripe, she's just all about that action, because she's like, come on now, you know what we're here for? You know who we're standing in for right now. It is time to smashu. And we get to see that these two are not necessarily these two. It's just the idea that these guys are you know what, we gotta figure that was the answer, whatever. And Star and Stripe, I guess she's so used to this idea that they could possibly die. I'm not sure, this implies a much darker side to Star and Stripe, especially considering the one we see in the next chapter that comes out. But she kind of just describes these people as expendable, because right after that, the dude literally says, well, let's hope at least one of us makes a safe landing. And all Star and Stripe says is, don't worry, I'll make sure your bodies make back it to the, I'll make sure your bodies get back to your families. Come on now, why'd you have to be such a savage? I guess it makes sense. You're fighting literally one of the few examples for a demigod that could really be described in My Hero Academia. That's just roaming around, one of arguably 3. I guess you could say All For One's main body, Shigaraki, and then Midoriya. They're all multi-quirk monsters that happen to be super duper strong. And then of course there's Star and Stripe, but she still only has 1 quirk. But after that, we go to the perspective of Shigaraki himself. Or is it really Shigaraki? Or is it All For One? Or is it either of them? Because apparently he can clearly in his mind, he can understand the fact that yes, biologically, internally, via my abilities, I am Shigaraki Tomura. But in actuality, I'm not entirely sure that I'm not All For One. The thing is, this is technically All For One speaking through Shigaraki. Because when he says, but at the same time, there's no doubt that I am me, that means he's referring to himself as All For One. All For One's consciousness is still in control of Shigaraki's body and a lot of its actions. It's why he's in the suit at all. Because Shigaraki wore a suit before. He actually wore it right after the Liberation arc, so maybe he would be rocking with this. But I don't think the suit is definitely more of a symbol of All For One, and he's noting that part of him isn't fully under control. You take a look at what else he's wearing, which is the random shoes and the cape itself. I feel like those are Shigaraki mementos that he himself, that All For One himself wouldn't necessarily wear. But he's not fully in control. And if he he is fully in control of the body, but Shigaraki's consciousness, reflections, memories, all that stuff is sort of influencing him. Not it's like a reverse possession. Like, All For One is taking upon the traits of Shigaraki, and we see that very much in this chapter by just how All For One seems to fight. But speaking of the fight, he instantly loads up. Like, once again, I praise Horikoshi's art a lot, but something I never actually really talk about. I technically talk about his art in general a lot, like the sheer drawing quality of it. But the dynamism of his art, like the different ways he can draw a singular character, that's what like actually blows me away. Because we have this one shot of him standing upon the Nobu, and then we get this like full body motion. Like he crouches, throws the palm back, and prepares to use radio waves plus air cannon plus heavy payload, and then boom, there's this massive like. It's weird to describe. Like I need to set myself aside and just gather panels and like explain why I love Horikoshi's art in multiple different ways so much. But seeing that massive, beautifully drawn blast that just blows apart the different planes, that's pretty darn cool. I won't even lie. It's just a cool ability, and I love how it just seems so. Like, is it weird to say fluid? Like, it's hard to describe drawings and not animation as fluid, but I feel like any of my other people who know what I'm talking about, where like the drawing seems to flow into one another. Like there's no like gap. Like I can clearly picture the movements between the different stances that the characters are taking and the different things that they're doing. And I think that's very difficult to do, shockingly enough. I'm working on a little something myself, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get like posing down and stuff like that, and like panel fluidity. It's a weird thing, but we get to see another thing that I really like the way I just mentioned, Shigaraki isn't there in the legal sense. Like, no, technically he is there in the legal sense. Physically there, that's legal. But in the mental sense, like, his body isn't under his control. You see a lot of, like, the reactions that Shigaraki's having are less All For One-ish reactions, and they're more, like, Shigaraki reactions. Like, instead of, like, a mocking smile, Shigaraki genuinely seems excited, or what I see... I would just call him All For Shigaraki. Hopefully I can keep that up in the video. But All For Shigaraki seems to be like really excited to be like, well, USA, who will be the one to tag the other? Like, this seems like a competitive edge that, I mean, All For One may have, but not to the degree that Shigaraki did. It's really the way that Shigaraki is drawn that reminds me more of Shigaraki post his awakening than All For One at all. Like, I'm not gonna lie, these two were a bunch of smiley boys, I will admit, especially after seeing All For One recently, but still, it feels a lot like Shigaraki there, and I know it's because it's his body. I'm not sure how much of this is intentional. It's just because, you know, it's Shigaraki's body. Not entirely sure. But then we get to see I was about to call her All Might, but no, Star and Stripe. She's like, all right, whatever, you know what the deal is. And she just goes air, stars, and like I want to. It's such a cool ability, mainly because of like how confusing it is. I'll get into that in a second, but air. As of now, the air does not exist 100 meters ahead of me. Huh? Like, see, the thing about Stars and Stripes' quirk is that her quirk is definition based. I'm assuming to a degree. Like, after touching a target, she can call the target's name and assign a new rule to it. And this, ironically enough, this was just a straight up, like, this shows the very stark difference between, like, All Might and Star and Stripe. Because she straight insta-round start after the first attack went for the kill. Like, she straight tried to suffocate that man. And I wonder how intentional it is. I wonder if that's just visual detail that makes it look like a star when the air disappears, or if it's, like, actually what it looks like. But seeing that, it makes you wonder, air. Like, she didn't say air molecule, she didn't say air everything. Like, air is composed of many different factors, oxygen, hydrogen, all the different parts of the atmosphere. And 100 meters ahead of her, she's flying forward right now. She's not just in one stagnant spot. So is the 100 meters ahead of her like a consistent thing? And for air itself, she didn't touch the air 100 meters ahead of her. She touched air that was directly in front of her. How did it affect? Like, Stars in, like, the Quirk New Order is a bit strange, I'm not gonna lie, and I think everyone knows this, and I think that's why, even in the next chapter, I don't think we have it fully explained. But then we get to see that, like, after Shigaraki instantly goes to grab his face, because he's like, oh, sweet lord, I can't breathe. Oh no, All For Shigaraki, after he goes to grab his face, it's like, that's the cool, I love it, because All For One has the concrete the concrete acknowledgement that is a brutal quirk. But he also wants it. Like, at the same time, he's feeding for that taste and he's super excited for it. And then I like how Star and Stripe, once again, is just all about that action, because she notices, you know what, actually, now that I think about it, taking away the air probably isn't enough to kill him. And she straight fires a whole bunch of laser blasts directly at this man. And the thing is, they all manage to like land and connect. And if really, let's be real, if Shigaraki didn't have this like reflect plus scatter quirk, that would have done some extreme damage, and really Star and Stripe would have just leaped right in right afterwards and then called it done. But we see that Shigaraki apparently has this ability called Reflect plus Scatter, which allows him to, I wonder if this is all ranged attacks or specifically light-based attacks. And speaking of which, for all my power scalers out there, if you want more light speed My Hero Academia, there it is. Like, Shigaraki was able to react, activate his quirk, and then fire back. And of course, Star and Stripe manages to, in the midst of him firing it, manages to react while flying forward, by the way, manages to react and catch the laser. Meanwhile, speaking faster than the laser could reach her in order to activate a new rule. It's a 2-second panel, really. Like, we go from laser being fired back out to the laser is holdable as the new rule of her quirk. But that's actually a pretty insane speed feat if we want to talk about that. But then we get to see that Shigaraki, the moment the damage isn't being done to him anymore, all for Shigaraki, his body starts healing. And, like, to be fair, the same thing happened with no moves before him, but, like, that extreme degree of healing seems a little bit more advanced than the hyper healing we've seen before. Like, that's pretty darn impressive. I love how Star and Stripe, like, she isn't staying overconfident, right? She didn't really come here that confident. She was just coming here putting on the hero act, which everyone does. But she's straight up like, she respects All for One Shigaraki because she understands now how Japan could have lost to this dude. Considering he's barely a dude anymore. That man, like, he's literally a different kind of monster. And I can definitely respect the hustle, Shigaraki. You do what you do. All for Shigaraki, do what you do. I'm going to just call him All for One, forget it. All for Shigaraki is way too much of a mouthful. But then we get to see that Shigaraki, like, I'm gonna keep switching back and forth. I see Shigaraki, I think All for One. All for Shigaraki is too much. Whatever I call him, you know what I'm talking about. But Shigaraki seems to notice that, wait a minute, the moment she said the laser is holdable, and the moment she managed to do that, I'm free. I can breathe again. Hold on a second. Is this my ability? Is this my chance? And he instantly, like, I wonder, is that a muscle compression? Hold on, let me see. Because, like, unlike before, the quirk isn't named that he uses to do this. Let me see. Yeah, it seems like he squishes his arm down and then, boom, fires himself off. Like, he doesn't flick himself or, like, leap like All Might or Midoriya would. But he literally just, like, kind of like a spring. He springs his arm and then has enough force behind it to launch himself at Star and Stripe. And Star and Stripe is, like, she's impressed because she's seen something like this before. Because, like, the moment, that's another amazing speed feat. Because I don't know why I know exactly why I'm so heavy on power scaling right now. I haven't done it in a while. But we see that Shigaraki mid-flight is like halfway there to Star and Stripe in one panel, but then Star and Stripe manages to clear that same distance and just straight hard leap off her own plane and slam him and say his name. Like, that is impressive. And the thing is, I guess what it's explained later on is that this was all part of Shigaraki's plan, but golly, that man looks like he got rocked. Like, that man was sent flying. But then we get, like, a slight explanation of Star and Stripe's quirk. Is that I can only set up new rules for 2 different targets at once. One of those 2 is always myself. I can't conjure up the super strength on All Might's level, but I'm not too shabby. Now, this implies some things, and that makes me wonder something about the next chapter. We aren't talking about the next chapter just yet. We're talking about this chapter. And in this chapter, that seems interesting because if she's always using super strength on herself, what did she say? Does she say, my body is at the limit, or, well, whatever her real name is, but does she say Star and Stripe's body is at the limits of its capacity? Like, it's at maximum strength efficiency at all times. And 2, what does that really mean? Because we got to realize something else. Like, Shigaraki being able to breathe this high, that's kind of normal. But this is a regular human person in airplane height. Fun fact, we don't do that well. Like, if you ever take a human that high in the air, relative to how high I think they are, I don't think they were just low flying over the seas, or that may be possible, but no, it's not, because we're literally in the clouds, so that's not possible. So how is she breathing right now? Like, does her telling her body via New Order, I'm at the limit of human strength, then of course she couldn't hit All Might's limit, because All Might's not the limit of human strength, he's holding multiple people. Does that mean that her body gets like all the adaptations of a human? Like, could a peak human, hypothetically, if you put them at the limit of their strength, or the limit of whatever strength is in the My Hero world, since we know it's likely higher, does that mean that like they could survive at that height? I don't know. That's amazing though. Like, I ain't gonna knock the hustle there. But then we get to see that not everyone has been influenced by All Might. I think this is like, it's a little bit corny. It's a little bit, like, okay, Horikoshi, maybe stretching a little bit. But to be fair, we did know that for a while now that All Might did straight up go on a whole internship to the U.S. So it is likely that he inspired some people there directly. And I'm not sure if this is a reference to the first movie, because to be fair, if I did see that, like, the first movie is so forgettable in my mind, I'm not sure if I saw it and just forgot about it, or if I just never seen it. I'm not sure if this is the reference, or if this is a reference to the movie at all. Please tell me in the comment section down below. Or if this is just like a random person you happen to say it. But even still, I'm glad that like this person is straight up like, he inspired Star and Stripe to become Star and Stripe. And I think that's very cool. And I love how, in order to like celebrate, but also like not necessarily make fun of, but like surpass All Might, the two tufts of hair that he had inspired her as like this fearless symbol of indestructibility, just like he is for everyone else. But by the time he saved her sister, but she went with 8 tufts, those long strands of hair, and it's kind of corny, but at the same time, it's kind of appropriate. And I love how this is definitely All For One speaking. I actually know it could be Shigaraki too, because he hates All For One and All Might as well. But the way he's like, there's no escaping him, and that cursed All Might. And I love how Star and Stripe's only response is, yeah, he's called the symbol of peace after all. But anyway, I've touched you and said your name, so now, if Shigeru Tomoaki moves at all, his heart will stop. like, I don't, is it weird? Or has no one else really gone for the kill? Like, in this entire series, like, at least in terms of our hero side, no one has ever really, like, pulled up straight up, like, you know what, forget it, drop the pretenses, I've just come round start to kill you. Because even, like, if Tomura Shigaraki moves at all, his heart will stop. That implies breathing, that implies flinching, that implies blinking. Like, that's a movement. That's why New Order is, like, so unbelievably vague. I just need to know the limits of it, because you could do some wild stuff with New Order if all you need to do is like New Order's getting its own video. That's it. I'm not even going to go into the speculation in this review because I'll talk for 15 years. But we get to see, well, All For Shigaraki sort of looks like a little bit, oh no, I've been touched and she said my name. He was actually like, la la, and just was like, she fell for it. And in the end, apparently, the whole process of All For One overriding Shigaraki as an individual didn't go as smoothly as Garaki and All For One really expected. Like, the idea of the clean takeover was just that, an idea. Shigaraki's hatred, his existence was too strong for even a deific being with hundreds of years of existence like All For One to just casually take over. And thusly, rather than him taking over, we get this beautiful image to show what's really happening, where All For One sort of has his arms wrapped around and is trying to tear apart Shigaraki. And I'm assuming this halfway process is what allows him to control Shigaraki's body, but however, he can't fully suppress Shigaraki's mind. And due to that fact, that means in actuality, Tomura Shigaraki's name is no longer Tomura Shigaraki. In fact, technically, his name was never that. His name was Tenko Shimura. But even going off of that, he's not Tenko Shimura anymore. This isn't All For One. This is some weird nexus being, this weird meeting point between the two. And even then, this meeting point isn't directly in the middle. Like, there's more of a lean on All For One side, considering he's the one that's in control and Shigaraki's the one fighting for his freedom. But at the same time, there's still influences of Shigaraki, which come through as small of how he dresses, obviously his appearance itself, and how he continues to fight back. And then we get to see that, like, All For One has some guesstimates about how much it could be. But in terms of this new evolution and how they're merging, All For One guesses it's around 97, perhaps 98%. That's like how close they are to becoming this new individual. And this is the first time we get to see Shigaraki almost like fight back and break free in a bit, because specifically it's Shigaraki who screams no. And this isn't Shigaraki, the one in the spirit world, that's sort of being like overwhelmed and torn apart by All For One. This is Shigaraki, the physical flesh body, who's lunging forward, and Star and Stripe is like, wait a minute, that man is not dying, he's moving though, so what's going on? And the interesting thing is that All For One like loves this rebellion. He's straight up like, yes, come on now, keep doing it, keep fighting back. And I love how this is like a catch-22 for Shigaraki. No matter what he does, he's going to lose, because if he doesn't fight back, then All For One just gets his body, bada bing, bada boom, it's over. But even when he does fight back, all that hatred, all that negativity, all that stuff only weakens his mind even more, to the point where All For One can just infest him. And we get to see the chapter end with Shigaraki's hair exploding in length, and the house that destroyed him, that killed Tenko Shimura and gave birth to Tomura Shigaraki, lead to a sparking explosion. And that's pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. This chapter was super duper solid. From seeing the introduction of New Order for the first time and it opening a billion questions, and of course if you're in like the My Hero Academia community, or if you live online in the internet at all, you definitely saw all the new wank for New Order. Of course, around start, like, she can beat Gojo, she can beat Goku, she can beat anybody as long as she touches them. Or some people are forgetting about the touching rule, but regardless of that, there's so many different things that have happened just because of this chapter alone. It's super influential on its own. It introduced a great character's ability with a great, it introduced a great ability, introduced a great dynamic, not introduced, but built upon a great dynamic that is shown between Shigaraki and All For One. It has amazing fights. The only thing I complain is that it wasn't longer. But to be fair, I do not want Horikoshi to overwork himself, because when what the heck? Because when Horikoshi overworks himself, that means he needs to go on break. And when Horikoshi needs to go on break, that means I don't get more My Hero Academia. When I don't get more My Hero Academia, I cry alone on the inside. But that is it. I love this chapter, and I'm super excited for like the real continuation and end of this fight. Star Stripe is doing way better than I thought she was going to do off rip, so I can't wait to see her do more. But that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off.